sobre isso. Você costuma... Esses 3 livros, eles falam de fatos históricos e tal, e pressupõem uma pesquisa razoável, porque o Boyne, sendo um autor irlandês, ele não tendo vivido nem aquele tempo do livro, nem aquele universo, ele precisou ter essas informações também, provavelmente de leituras, de pesquisa, enfim. Mas você está contando que escreveu em 2 dias pelo menos o primeiro rascunho do Menino do Pijama Listrado. Mas você já tinha lido sobre o holocausto, já tinha lido sobre motins, aberturas navais, você tem esse processo de ler primeiro e depois escrever?
Well, firstly, just on the issue of being an Irish writer, I have found, as I've travelled with the different books to different countries, that this issue sometimes comes up. And I do feel that North American writers and British writers never get asked that. If you come from one of those countries, it seems you're allowed to write about anything you want and nobody will question it. But if you come from a small country, you should stick to what you know. I don't think there's any difference between an Irishman writing about the Holocaust and somebody from New York of my age who has not grown up in those times. I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Ireland, where fences very much existed and where the country was very much dominated and torn apart by the same type of religious intolerance and prejudice and violence that is at the heart of this novel. But in terms of the research, it really goes back to when I was about 15 years old, on the last day of school for the summer holidays, and my English teacher came in with a list of about 40 books, and he told us to write all the names of the books down, and he said, if you read 1 or 2 books over the summer, pick something here and you'll be better for it. And the first book I read was A Periodic Table by Primo Levi. And I had never read Primo Levi. Yeah. And I had never read about the Holocaust before. I knew very little about it other than the fact of its existence. But that book triggered an interest in me, which over the course of a year or 2 I read through all of Primo Levi and Elie Wiesel and Frank, all the great writers on the subject. And over the years that followed, you mentioned that you worked in a bookshop for 7 years, and every time there was a new book on the Holocaust, I always found myself reading it. Not in order to do research for a book myself, but just to educate myself, just because I wanted to understand it. And I wanted to know why it happens. I wanted the same thing as Bruno in the book, is trying to understand what's going on over there. So by the time I came to write the book, I think I was probably as well educated as somebody in my position today can be on the subject, and it read very, very widely. And all of that reading went into that first draft. Now in the second and subsequent drafts, then I went back to those books. And I read some I hadn't read, such as there's a diary that Rudolf Hoss, the commandant of Auschwitz, wrote, was forced to write by the British before his execution, in which he talks about the creation of Auschwitz. Rudolf Hoss's wife also writes about it, and their memoirs were certainly very important. So I think I had researched a lot, and I felt educated.
Eu vou fazer mais uma pergunta, depois eu passo para a plateia. Você falou sobre, na verdade, sobre o tom desses 3 livros, que são livros escritos, narrados por pessoas inocentes em relação ao assunto que está sendo tratado. No caso específico do Menino, Pijama Listrado, o Menino é um garoto que na verdade, ele narra fatos que ele não sabe o que significa, mas que o leitor vai percebendo, que o leitor sabe mais do que o narrador. Isso é um recurso muito típico da literatura moderna, desde do Henry James, enfim, de autores aí como Norman Oxford, enfim. É muito típico da literatura e, a meu ver, é um recurso que dá para usar muito em literatura, porque na literatura você não está enxergando a cena, você tem que confiar muito naquilo que a pessoa está dizendo. E o cinema, muitas vezes, é o contrário disso, porque no cinema você está enxergando tudo o tempo inteiro, não sei se você concorda com isso. Eu estou fazendo essa longa introdução para perguntar a respeito da adaptação do filme, Menino do Pijama Listrado, que foi feita e que tem, eu vi ontem o filme, não tinha visto ainda, ela me parece que tem menos desse tom. Assim, no filme você enxerga tudo o tempo inteiro, né? E a minha pergunta é assim, primeiro, o que você achou, né, da adaptação, e o que você acha que o filme perdeu em relação ao livro e o que eventualmente ganhou?
Well, I worked very closely with Mark Herman, who wrote and directed the film, and the producers, and I was there right through the process on the set, so I did like it, and I felt they did a very good job on it. And a decision we made at the start was that in the book, of course, everything is seen from the perspective of a 9-year-old child. So everything except the last 3 pages of the book, right through his eyes. Very difficult to do that on screen. So the decision was made at the start to move it from being about the boy to being about the family, and to bring them into the story a bit more. So we see more of Bruno's parents' lives. We certainly see more of Bruno's mother, who's a much more important character in the film than she is in the novel. I think it doesn't gain or lose anything. It's just a different perspective on the story. I think one thing that Mark did quite well was there were some scenes in the film which work very well as visual images that wouldn't necessarily have worked in the book. For example, there's in the novel when Bruno discovers that his sister Gretel has been brainwashed into the Nazi ideals through her adoration for Lieutenant Klockner. He realises this by running up to her room. He runs inside, and her dolls have been taken down, and maps of the armies going across Europe have gone up. But in the film, Bruno has lost his football. He goes down to the cellar with a torch, and when he shines the torch, he sees all the piled up bodies of the dolls, which is obviously reflecting what's taking place on the other side of the fence. So that's a wonderful visual image in the movie that Mark came up with, which wouldn't work as well in the book, but it works great in the movie. So I was very happy with it. I thought he did a really good job.
E o filme manteve o final, foi quase uma exigência sua, né, quando negociou os direitos.
Yeah, the first conversation I had with Mark and with David Heyman, who produced it, was about the ending. And I made it very clear at the start that you can't change the ending. The things you're going to have to change to translate it onto screen, but we can't have a happy ending. What happens, and so be it. But right from the start, they were very well on board with that. I mean, they knew the book they wanted to make, and Disney and Miramax, who produced the thing, they never once came to us and wanted to change the ending. I mean, I think if they had wanted to change the ending, they wouldn't have bought the book in the first place. They would have just said, no, this one isn't for us. And I know that pretty much every other studio who had seen the novel had passed on it because of the ending. They said, we can't do this. You can't have an ending like this on screen. You can't put children in such jeopardy. You can't give children such a tragic end. But ironically, Disney said, well, we can if we do it sensibly.
Para a plateia, quem tiver perguntas pode levantar o braço e aí
Boa tarde. Eu queria perguntar como você baseia o Menino do Pijama Listrado nessa época do holocausto. O que você acha das pessoas que afirmam que isso não existiu?
There's a television chat show in Ireland called The Late Late Show, and it's on every Friday night. And it's been running for about 40 years, so it's very, very well known. And about a year ago, they had, do you know David Irving? Mm-hmm. You might have heard David Irving, who's
autor de Mundo Segundo Lugar.
No, that's John Irving. No, David Irving is a very prominent Holocaust denier. And he's written books denying the Holocaust, and he's been jailed in Germany, of course, because in Germany it's a crime to deny the Holocaust. and he was jailed in Germany for this. But he's written quite widely on it. And he was on the Late Late Show on Irish TV for, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, being interviewed. And the thing that I didn't understand was, why bother? You know, why give him the time? Why give him the airspace? To me, it's like somebody being given time to discuss why the earth was really flat. You know, it's just the rantings of a lunatic. And discussing them, listening to them, giving them time on radio or television, we can forget about it being disrespectful or anything like that. It's just pointless. It's just listening to the rantings of a madman. And the trick is just not to engage. Simple as that. Just don't engage.